I get cold calls, cold emails, and LinkedIn direct messages from a lot of salespeople every single day. And almost all of these salespeople are making the same 4 mistakes. Not only are these mistakes hurting their sales results, but these mistakes are also likely making the job of selling much more difficult and stressful than it needs to be. But the good news is that these mistakes are extremely easy to fix and completely avoid, and I will explain all of that in this video. And the first mistake that almost all of these salespeople make is that they communicate in a way that flags them as being a salesperson who is reaching out to try to sell something. Almost every cold call, cold email, and direct message I get on LinkedIn sounds something like this and will follow this general outline. Hi, Michael. I'm with Websites Redesigned for You. We provide website design services. Are you needing to redesign your website? Can we schedule a meeting to talk about the services we provide? Now, of course, these salespeople typically say much more than this in their emails and in their messages. But the overall structure of what they are communicating when they reach out follows this general flow. This is who I am. This is what I sell. Do you need what I sell? Now, if you look at that approach real quickly, you might say, well, what's wrong with that if that's the service the salesperson provides? Well, the problem with that is that prospects are getting bombarded by sales outreach every day. So when you communicate in this type of way, what you are doing is you are lumping yourself as being part of this daily barrage, and you are making yourself look like you are just the next salesperson who's reaching out to the prospect to try to get them to buy something. And when you do this, this immediately triggers the prospect's guardedness, leading to emails getting instantly deleted without being read and cold calls being received with a high level of objections, rejection, and resistance. Now, I'm not saying that you should hide the fact that you're a salesperson and mislead or misrepresent who you are and what you're trying to do. But what you can do is you can modify your approach and make small changes to how you communicate so that you end up sounding more like an advisor or a consultant than a salesperson who's trying to sell a product. Making these changes will not only help you to avoid the immediate shutdown, but it can also help to improve the impression you make, leading to better rapport and relationships with the prospects you're trying to sell to. Now, there's many small changes you can make to sound more like an advisor and consultant, but one of the changes actually relates to the second mistake that just about all of these salespeople make that reach out to me. They talk too much about the product they sell. And again, while it sounds normal for a salesperson to try to talk a lot about their product, there are a few big issues when you do this too much when you are performing cold outreach to prospects. First of all, talking about your product is going to make you sound like a salesperson who's trying to sell something. That is going to trigger guardedness. Guardedness is going to lead to emails being deleted and objections. Talking about your product is communicating in a way where you're being more all about me. And also, when you're performing cold outreach, you need to keep in mind that the prospects you're reaching out to are most likely not in buying mode for the product or service you sell at the exact time that they receive your email or answer your call. Now, if you look at that, you might say, okay, well, that makes sense, but I am a salesperson, so if I don't talk about my product, what else am I going to talk about when I'm reaching out to prospects? Well, here's the trick. Instead of talking directly about the product you sell, talk about the improvements your product has delivered to other customers you've sold it to. And I say this is a trick because you are still actually talking about the product, but by making this small change, you will not only sound more like a consultant or an advisor than an annoying salesperson, but you will be talking about and focusing more on what the prospect really cares about, which is what is in it for me if I buy your product, because what is in it for the prospect are the improvements your product can deliver to them. And the third mistake that just about all of these salespeople make that reach out to me is that just about all of them are trying to close for the purchase in their cold outreach. And even though when you're performing cold outreach, like cold email or cold calling, you technically can't take the order and close the sale right then. But these salespeople still try to close for the product by asking the prospect if they are interested in what they sell or if they need what they sell. And while that also sounds like a normal thing for a salesperson to ask, there are a few problems with this when you do this during cold outreach. First, as I mentioned, when you're first reaching out to a prospect, it's most likely the case that they're not sitting there thinking about buying your product at that particular time. So when you try to see if they want or need what you sell, because of this mismatch, you are more likely to get a response that is an objection in the form of something like, "No, thank you. I'm not interested. We already used someone today. We're doing fine. We're not making any changes right now." So this is going to lead to more objections, rejection, and resistance. But a bigger issue with selling the product during cold outreach is that the purchase of the product is actually not the next step in the sales process in most cases. In most cases, when you're first interacting with a prospect, usually the next step in the process is to simply talk more and have a conversation. Whether that's a longer conversation right there over the phone or scheduling a meeting, setting an appointment, talking in more detail on another day. And what you can do is you can modify what you say in your cold outreach so that you shift from trying to sell the product and focus more on simply selling the conversation. Not only is this an easier and more logical step to close for, but it's actually more difficult for the prospect to object to simply talking more. And the fourth mistake that almost all of these salespeople make that reach out to me is that they never pick up the phone to call me. Of the 100 or so cold emails and direct messages that I receive every day, I would say that about 1% or less of those salespeople ever pick up the phone and call me. If your cold outreach strategy does not include a step for picking up the phone and calling prospects, you are missing opportunities and leaving money on the table. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that making cold calls is easy or extremely effective by itself. But when you pair cold calling with a cold email campaign, what you can do is you can make very targeted cold calls to prospects that you've warmed up with your cold emails. For example, you can use email automation software to maybe create a string of cold emails, automate the delivery of those, send those out to a large number of people. And most software applications will track email opens and links in emails that have been clicked. And what you can do is you can launch one of these cold email campaigns in kind of a set it and forget it way and let those emails warm up and educate the prospects that you're trying to sell to. Educate them on who you are, why you're reaching out, and why it would be worth their valuable time to talk to you. And then what you can do is you can look at your cold email campaign data and see which prospects are engaging with your cold emails in terms of opening and clicking on links. And what that data will tell you is it'll tell you which prospects are raising their hands as possibly being interested in what you sell, or at least possibly knowing who you are. And then what you can do is you can spend your valuable time calling those prospects and reaching out to them to try to start the conversation. So hopefully those 4 mistakes and ways to fix them or avoid them, give you some new ideas for how to improve your cold outreach. If you have questions or you want more information, the best place to go is salescriptor.com. Thanks for being here. Again, hope this was helpful, and we look forward to seeing you on the next video. Have a great day. Take care. Bye.